Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in my workshop. Today we're going to have a go at something a bit different, a bit of sculpture. Got about 11-inch diameter piece of London plane. It's got a bit of natural edging on it, and we're going to incorporate that into something a little bit contemporary with some texture. Don't know how it's going to work out, so stick around. Let's see what we can do. So design. I know that I want a hole through the centre. It's not going to be a very big hole, maybe 20mm hole, but I know that that's what I want to do. I want to be able to see through it. I also know that I want to keep some of this live, or all of this live edging as best I can, and incorporate a bit of the natural organic feel into the contemporary feel. So I'm going to, off camera, drill a hole through there, and then I'm going to mount it on the lathe using a faceplate, or in my case I'm going to use a chuck with faceplates on it, and I'm going to use compression between that and the tailstock so that it holds it on the lathe. I'm not going to have any screw holes, or I'm not going to glue this one because I'm going to do a double-sided sculpture. Eventually it'll get mounted on a little wooden block, and so it'll be freestanding. And my idea is that I'm going to turn some simple lines in it, and then in between the lines create different textures, and hopefully the contrast between the different textures and the clean finished surface will be really nice. I'm going to add some colour. I haven't decided yet whether it's going to be white or black. That is the extent of the colour I add. So I don't do all the fancy different types of colours. I don't really like those. So I like to see the contrast between white or black and the natural wood. So that's what I'm going to go with. But I'm quite open with the design at the moment. We'll see how we get on. Both sides though will be different. So it'll be interesting to see what we can come up with and how we achieve that. So stick around. I'm going to drill this off camera and then I'll come back to you. So we've got the piece of wood now, the hole's been drilled. I've lined it up on the tailstock so that the hole marries up with the tailstock, and then I've used compression to hold it against the chuck that I've got the face plates on. And that will hold that nice and true. So you want to start the lathe on a slow speed to make sure you're okay, checking it periodically to make sure the tailstock is tight to keep that compression, otherwise it's going to start rattling around. My first job is to true this up, and I don't want to lose this natural edging, so I'm just going to turn it until this is as round and even as I can, and then I'm going to texture all the sides including the edge. So let's get this turned. What I'm doing here is putting a set square, normal carpentry set square, on it to make sure that my rim there is at a right angle with the face, and I'll do that both sides. And I can see I need to adjust it a little bit more. So he's not quite there. There's a bit of a dip this side, so I need to get that a bit truer. Eventually, you see, what I want to do is mount this on a block of wood, so it's got to sit so that it's not leaning one way or the other. I want it to sit straight on that base. So I'll keep going on that until I've got it square. So I've got this outer edge now square with the sides, and I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is think about the design on this face, because obviously this is the face I'm going to work on first. Now on this side, as I think the other side, I think that the actual hole, because that's going to be emitting light, I think that's going to be where I stain it black, ebonize it. So I'm going to move the tool rest so that I can draw a pencil line in there. Just like so. And I think I'm going to have, let's have that up a little bit actually. I think I'm going to have somewhere quite close in there a line where it's going to be black, ebonized. From there to the centre, it's going to be black ebonized. And then we're going to have quite a narrow ring of bare wood. Maybe there. There's no measurements, I'm just playing this by ear. So actually we'll have that a little bit thinner. We'll have that so it stands out. And this being London plain, it'll be a lovely orangey type of colour that comes out. So if that area there is, let's have the light on it a bit better so you can see it. That area there is going to be natural bare wood sanded. In here we're going to have it ebonized, but it's also going to be textured. So now we're going to work out what we're going to do here. So if that's natural, we're going to have an area that's textured again, but I don't want that texture to interfere with this natural edging. So I want to combine an organic and contemporary feel to this piece. So if we go a bit wider so as not to catch that, this area could also be textured and ebonized. And then this area could be natural wood again. So you'd have natural wood, then ebonized area, then natural wood, and then ebonized in the center. Yeah, I quite like that. I quite like that idea. The thing is, if I put any turning designs on here, for example, if I was to use a skew chisel or parting chisel and come in here and do a groove, you're going to have a V there in the natural edge and then another V in the natural edge there, and I don't know whether that's going to look right. So I might just leave that natural wood there and then ebonize that face. I bet some of you are already thinking, how is he going to ebonize a face, the edge, but not the face and not have bleed? Well, I'll show you a trick for that later. So this is what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to texture that, texture the inner bit, and then ebonize those places. Texture the outside as well, and go on from there. So the first job, now I've done these markings out, so I'm going to have texture here, I'll put a T in it, and a texture in the center. What I'm going to do now is reverse it and mark out some lines of what I'm going to do on the other side. And that is really an easy thing to do. Move the tool rest out of the way. Because there's no fixing, there's only compression. You just undo the tailstock, release it off the tailstock, turn it around. We know we're in center because the hole is in the center. And away we go again. But Okay, so we know we're held in there tight. So now I can put the tail rest back in and we can mark this side. Now, because we're doing the other side, ebonizing, the other side of the hole ebonizing, we'll need to do the same on this side, definitely. So let's put that in there. Now, what we could do here, because we've got more of a spanse of wood before that natural edging starts, we could find somewhere handy like there and do that. Oh, I've moved slightly, so we'll have to do that again. There we go, I'm back on it. No, there we go, back on it. Right, so now we've got a wider area. We could do texturing in just that area and then leave this area. Oh yeah, this area would be, yeah, see, it's decisions. I reckon I'm going to leave, on this side, I'm going to leave the outer rim natural wood. I reckon I'm going to texture in the center there and texture here, but do two different textures and ebonize all of that to the center and then just have the outer rim as natural wood. That, I think, is what we're going to do there. So I'm going to texture that and texture in that rim and texture on the outer rim as well. So now we just got to work out what type of texturing we're going to do. Now, there are loads of different ways of doing texturing, loads. And you just got to play on a scrap piece of wood with all the kit you got as to how and what type of texturing you do. So I'm just going to show you what I think is right. By all means, you do whatever it is you think is right or what you like. Okay, so I'm going to get this piece off the lathe, and I'm going to use the lathe as a tabletop, and I'm going to texture while the piece of wood is sat on the bed of the lathe. So when I'm set up, I'll come back to you. Okay, so I've had a bit of an idea, and I'm going to try something totally new for me. I've started drawing some lines, and I'm just going to go with the flow of it here and see what I can do. I'm just doing a random bit of design, and these are going to be like almost like pieces, lengths of electric coming out of those electric globes you see at science at school. Do you know what I mean? On those globes. Just try and give it some flow. The area itself is still going to be ebonized. I'm just giving myself some patterns to follow with the texturing. Hopefully you're picking this up on the camera. So I'll bring it a bit closer to you. Hopefully you'll be able to see those pencil lines. The idea is I'm going to keep the pencil lines within those narrow lines. I'm going to keep that as the surface as it is and texture in the wider areas. And I think that might look quite nice. The whole thing from this rim across to the centre and the hole will be ebonized. So let's see how that goes. Right, so I'm going to start texturing now. I've got a cheap substitute for a Dremel here, and they're pretty good. And a little cutter, ball cutter in the end. It's about mid-range. I'm not sure what the measurement is, but if I put my finger against it, you can see it probably a bit better. It's not the smallest one I got, and it ain't the biggest, somewhere in the middle. And I'm going to use this to do a texture on this wider rim of this side, and then I'll use a smaller one to do the center circle. So I'm going to fire this up and get on with doing this texturing on this outer rim. Right, so I've changed out for a smaller bit. Hopefully you can see the size difference of the two of them there. And I'm going to use this smaller bit to go around the inner circle and create the texturing there for that. So the texturing on this side is pretty complete. I think what I'm going to do, when I mount it back on the lathe in a minute, I'm going to use a skew and just define the line of the outer edge of the texturing and the inner edge and the outer edge of that circle as well. I'm just going to define it. Perhaps I should have done that to start with, but you live and learn. Not done anything like this before, so not on the lathe anyway. So I think that's what I'm going to do when I come to put it back on the lathe shortly. I'll do the same on the outer line here, but I've got to texture this first, I think. I'm not going to worry about that inner line because I'm going to just leave that smooth. So all of these bigger areas are going to get textures next.
The texturing has now been done on both sides and around the rim. So what I want to do now is, remember, this area is going to be ebonized, all of it. So to stop the bleed from here over the line to there, what I'm going to do is oil this outer rim first. I'm going to use a brush and I'm going to really carefully brush the oil in around this outer rim, and then I'll wipe off any excess. I don't want to get oil anywhere on the textured area or anywhere on the outer rim. I just want it on this surface here. So that's what I'm going to have a go at now. If you do happen to get some oil in those areas that you don't want, you can always try and sand it out or recarve those dimples that I've done. So just very carefully and putting the oil on. I'm using Osmo hard wax oil, the UV protection one. I'm just going up to the line, just easing it on. Just don't want to get it on that leading edge there either, so I'm going to go all the way around. Don't need too much on your brush because you need some control. All I'm doing here is just wiping off the excess. There we go. Now the beauty of this design, of course, is because there's nothing going on in the center at the moment, I can get a handy reel of tape, turn this upside down and stick it on the lathe, and I can comfortably oil this side now, and then both sides will be dry by the morning. course this side I've got this natural edge that needs to be done as well. So I'll get that done, get the rest of this done and that inner circle, and I'll bring you back when I've done that. So the non-textured areas have now been oiled. That inner circle, the outer rim here, the live edge bit and the outer edge on the other side. What I've got to do now is wait overnight for this oil to dry. And the reason for that is the ebonizing solution I use is water-based. Now, with that oil dry, when I put the ebonizing solution on, even though I'm going to be really careful and not splash it about, it will not soak and bleed into the areas that are already got oil on them, because the oil has already penetrated the top of the surface of the wood, and therefore the ebonizing solution can't go in as well. So you should end up with a definitive line between the ebonized area and the oiled area. But you've got to put that oil on first and it's got to dry. So this piece now is going to sit on the lathe overnight, let that oil dry, and then I'll be back tomorrow to ebonize the textured areas. Right, 'tis the morning after and the oil is all dry. Looking good so far, eh? Right, so what we got to do is ebonize these textured areas. Now, ebonizing solution you can buy direct from woodworking shops all over the place, really. Any of them will probably do it. eBay and Amazon obviously will sell ebonizing solution. I tend not to buy commercial products, I tend to make my own. I spend some time in the winter mixing vinegar and wire wool and stuff like that, and I prefer the solution I make to what's on offer in the shops. You could use Indian ink, and there's other things you could use. You could paint it if you wanted to, like a matte paint, if that's what you wanted to do. I know some of the enamel paints, they're quite good, and I do use white in enamel paint, but this one's going to be ebonized. So it's a water-based solution with vinegar, as I say, mild still, and it kind of reacts with the wood and makes it go black. You've got to play with the solution a little bit, and that takes trial and error practice. So there's no real recipe I can give you. It's just got to play with it. You know what I mean? You just got to play with it. If you're going to have a go at making your own, play with it, leave it for, you know, get yourself a pickling jar, a big pickling jar, and add a load of mild steel, wire wool, rusty bolts, things like that, and half fill it with vinegar, and then perhaps pop in a little bit of water, and hopefully over time that'll blacken up. And I sometimes heat mine, boil it up in a pan, and that seems to help with the reaction. I don't know why, I'm not a chemist. So we're having lights flickering at the moment because there's real strong winds about in Dorset, and I have a feeling we might lose the power. Right, anyway, so ebonizing. What we've also got to talk about today is a base. Now, I work part-time. I work a couple of days a week in a warehouse, and one of my duties in that warehouse is to assemble things. Now, when you strip these things from the pallets, a lot of the time it's come from a far-flung country and it's been packaged with lots of wooden packaging. So it comes with blocks of wood like this. I have no idea what type of wood it is, but as most of you will know, I have quite strong feelings about importing timber, and I don't like it. I don't like the waste, the mileage. I just don't like all this timber being imported into this country for what purpose? We've got some of the best timber in the world, and really, why can't we use our own timber and get our own industries stronger? Anyway, it's brought in it's supposedly, with a stamp on it, it's supposedly, what's the word, deforestation. It's not deforestation, it's supposed to be approved felling. Anyway, I got loads of these because if I didn't take them and use them, they would literally go in a skip and go off to be tipped somewhere, and I don't like that either. So I've got a load of these, and what I do is literally as a base, I'm going to cut that in half, mark the center spot, drill a hole, sand it right down so it's nice, and then ebonize that. So that will be my base. So eventually this piece will somehow sit on there like that, and it'll be half of this block because I'd have cut it in half, and it'll sit there on there like that. The way I'm going to connect the two is with a bit of threaded bar, and I'll just cut that to size, drill a hole in the half that's there, pop that in with a bit of glue, and then drill a hole in the where I'm going to have the bottom of the piece. I'll have to think about the orientation of the sculpture before I drill the hole, obviously, and then glue that onto the top half of the threaded bar, and that will be a complete sculpture then. That's what I intend to do. But back to the ebonizing, and I'll change the angle of the camera and show you how I go about doing that. So I'm going to start off by using a normal black Sharpie pen. And the edges, where it meets the oil, where the texture meets the oil, I'm going to draw the line with a Sharpie pen. Now, this will create a really neat edge. I know some of you will be thinking, well, that's going to fade after time. But don't forget, I'm going to put another coat of UV protection oil on this, so this won't fade. So this will allow me to have a really nice crisp edge instead of trying to do it with a brush. I could do it with a brush, but I've only had 1 cup of coffee this morning and I might get a handshake. So I'm going to do it with the pen. And it's just simply draw around the edge where the oil meets the bare wood. I've just done that little bit, look. And that'll give me a nice crisp edge. So I'm going to crack on with that. I'm going to go all the way around and then do this circle as well and that circle as well, and then I'm going to start painting with a brush and getting the ebonizing solution on. Right, so, excuse me. Right, so I shall keep doing that. I'll go all the way around and the inner side as well. And don't forget, you've got to do in this hole. It'll probably take 2, maybe 3 coats for it to be black enough for me. So I'm going to crack on and do that, and then I'll come back to you when it's done. Right, so while I've been away, I've finished ebonizing the first coat on this one. I've also gone off and cut that block up, sanded it, drilled a hole in it, and I've ebonized that. So I've got to wait for the ebonizing solution to dry on these two before I can put the second coat on them. This one's nearly dry, so I'll do that in a minute. Now bear in mind, when I've finished ebonizing this side and that, I've got to re-oil it before I put the two pieces together, because this hasn't got any oil as yet, and this hasn't got any oil on the textured areas. So this piece, once all the ebonizing's done, it'll have a full coat, another coat of oil, and that'll have to dry whilst the oil on this one is drying, and then when they're both dry I will put the two together.